welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Hope you guys are doing well. Back at it with another video, and this is the last video that I'm making for my Looking Ahead series. If you guys have been following along for the last couple of weeks, I've been taking a look at the major planetary ingresses that are taking place throughout this next year. Now, we have touched on Saturn in Aries, we have touched on Neptune in Aries, but we have not talked about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So that is the last video for you guys. I'm going to be diving deep into what this means for all of us, giving you guys some food for thought on some notes I've been taking and just some things that I've been kind of experiencing and seeing so far with Neptune in this sign. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Click the bell button below so you're alerted as to when I have new videos on the channel. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, trying to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. All right, guys. Well, first of all, welcome. Can we get a hallelujah? Mercury retrograde's over. We just got to wait for Venus to go direct. And obviously, the last couple of weeks has been a lot. And I think that there's like a little bit of like a method to the madness as why there has just been such a storm that has been brewing in the area of Aries in the sky. So today we're going to be diving deep into obviously this very powerful and also a very rare astrological event that's on the horizon. Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries. We'll be feeling it throughout all of 2025, especially the next couple of months. Although the exact conjunction will not be taking place until February of 2026. But this year, okay, and in just a few short months, we're going to see Saturn move into the sign of Aries, and Saturn and Neptune are going to be moving closely together. Now, yes, this has been happening in Pisces, right? But we're going to see it in both of the signs this year, and they have a very different energy. There's a very different vibe of Saturn and Neptune in Pisces versus Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And I really feel like it's a preview, like I said, of what is going to be coming up for us next year. 2025 for me feels like the year that we're pulling back the curtain. It's about starting to kind of give us little glimmers and visions of what is actually coming for us in 2026. And it's really about making a choice. And we can kind of follow the path in 2025 of being like an ostrich and kind of keeping our head in the sand. Or we can decide to really look at some of these storms, some of these challenges, some of this upheaval that's kind of coming into our life in a specific area and decide that we are willing to look that problem in the face and deal with it. I think this is going to be making the event even bigger because the conjunction will be taking place at 0 degrees of Aries. So this is the 0 degree cardinal point. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the beginning of spring. So it does represent the new kind of birth of life, some kind of new energetic shift. It's the energy, obviously, in the element of fire. So it's quick moving, very passionate, and it can either kind of light something up in us or it can destroy something. So I'm seeing this as like a spark moment. You know, the cardinal energy is igniting something, I think, monumental for humanity. After all, Aries is about the sign of man, right? So when we see Aries or Sag or Aquarius, anything that deals with humans, those particular zodiac signs, it's going to actually impact humankind. So when we think about Aries, the god of war, associated with Mars, obviously we think about things like war. But it's going to have a different blend because there's going to be the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. Religion, spirituality, or even the birth of a new phase for the collective is expected. Now, many astrologers are already kind of all over the internet, all over YouTube, making their predictions. But the truth is that we don't really exactly know what's going to happen. But I will tell you guys, we want to take a look at what's been happening over these last few weeks. So in this particular video, I'm going to touch on, what the Neptune-Saturn conjunction kind of means. We're going to talk about how it applies in Aries. I'm also going to give you guys some food for thought about what this might be bringing up for us in the future. This is more how to deal with it in a personal way. It's going to be less about, well, this is going to happen in the world, that's going to happen in the world. You'll see some of that in some of my videos in the future. But quite frankly, in dealing with the Aries transits, I've been much more focused in speaking to you on an individual level because we're getting out of that, Pisces, Saturn, Neptune stuff. This has been where everybody else has been lost, everybody else has been afraid, everybody's been confused, and it's been about this global shift. Now we are moving more in the direction of individuals, because if individuals choose to get serious about the future, if they are holding themselves accountable, if they are following their dreams and also thinking and seeing clearly, we will see a collective shift where everybody else is going to follow. I think really this is about the reality of needing to kind of also, face some of our own flaws. I think this is about stepping into something that's very epic and some new opportunities, some new beginning. And I welcome that, because I think it's going to be really great for all of us on an individual level, but also collectively. Now, first I want to talk a little bit about Saturn meeting Neptune. All right. So, this cycle happens every 36 years. I've talked about this in previous videos, but the last time we had the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, we saw this taking place in 1989, going into 1990. I'll go into that in length, but I just want to remind you guys that this is rare because it happens only every 36 years. And not only is it happening at a very specific, very potent astrological degree, the very first degree in the zodiac, but this is going to be happening in a cycle that is really about the merger, right? The conjunction is the strongest aspect in astrology. The merger of two particular planetary energies, blending the two of them together. And I'm calling this fever dreams, right? Aries is heat. Obviously, it can be about feverish things. Obviously, Neptune can be about dreams, and Saturn is just kind of showing us like what is and what is not real. This is really important. The astrology that's been taking place over the last couple of weeks, we have seen that there has been a Mercury retrograde that took place in Aries, which has just concluded. We had a Venus retrograde, which began in Aries, which is finishing up this week. And both of these retrograde planets have actually gone over the 0-degree Aries point. So it has been kind of forecasting and foreshadowing, hey, this is what's going to be coming up, or this is kind of the whispers or the potential changes in patterns that are going to be emerging when Saturn and Neptune are at this sign. Now, Neptune is there right now as well. So not only have we seen a retrograde that has included two of these particular planets in this sign, and it's even mirroring the going back and forth between Pisces, more of like the etheric, spiritual, kind of sensitive, behind the scenes, versus Aries, which is kind of like in your face and kind of direct. There's so many synchronicities with what's been going on with the astrology that it's just kind of like mind-blowing. But in the last few weeks, we have also seen Neptune ingress into Aries as well. So we're already kind of in it. I feel like when I was thinking about it, I've just seen some things that have just kind of happened in my family's lives, my clients' lives, my life, stuff I've been observing out in the world. And a couple of days ago, I was like, yeah, the storm's here. That's really what's going on. It feels like it's been very chaotic and it's been very confusing. I attribute a lot of that to the retrograde, but I also look at, Neptune moving into Aries. And I really, to me, feels like that it's been bringing up for a lot of people whether or not they're seeing things clearly, or whether or not they can trust their reality, or whether or not they can get out of an old habit or out of an old pattern, and if they're afraid to move forward. Now, the good news is that when Saturn joins the bunch, this is the last planet that needs to move into Aries, and we're going to be seeing that kind of happening in May, going into June. This is when Saturn is going to bring in the structure. But before that even happens, you guys are watching this at the beginning of April. I want you to think about the stuff that's been kind of brewing over the last couple of months in your chart. You're going to want to look at the whole sign Aries area. Yes, there's been retrogrades back into Pisces. So we're going to have to still, later this fall when Saturn and Neptune go back into Pisces, we're still going to be working through some of that stuff. We're going to be kind of clearing out where there's been confusion, where there's been fog, things we didn't know, stuff that we need to find out. Also, it's going to be a lot about healing. And we're still going to see eclipses taking place in Pisces as well. We're going to see one in the fall, and those Pisces eclipses are still going to kind of continue. But I really feel like with Saturn showing up, this is going to now be the building phase. And I'm cautious to say the rebuilding phase. I was going to say the rebuilding phase, but I don't really feel like this is about rebuilding. I feel like a lot of 2025 is going to feel like tower moments for a lot of people, where we're just kind of leveling something, or something gets leveled in our lives, and then we go, okay, now we have to completely start over. Be building firmer structures, really kind of getting down to the issues of what's been going wrong, or where there hasn't been such structure in certain areas of our lives, and we're going to be building something stronger. We're going to be re-envisioning something for ourselves. Now, where that's happening for you is going to be the house where you're going to see Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So yes, maybe there are things that are concluding or completing. Maybe they're breaking down. They're not working very well in Pisces, but that is giving way to make it possible for you to start something new, which is going to be in the area of Aries in your chart. So you're going to have to look at which house that is. That's where you're going to see the most action. At the end of the video, I will take you through the 12 signs and kind of talk about where this is happening and what that combo of Saturn and Neptune together really mean. But the whole purpose here is that we have to choose, right? We have to choose to rebuild that area of our life. We have to choose to have a better vision, to believe in our dreams, to also know where we've been kidding ourselves or where there's been pipe dreams or where we've been kind of afraid to kind of step up to the plate. So there has to be a conscious choice. It is very personal. It does not matter where Aries is in your chart. It could be in your 7th house. It could be in your 10th house. It could be in your 8th house. The area of Aries is always going to have a personal connection, even if it's in a house that deals with other people, other places, other themes. Your relationship to that thing, your participation in that area of your life. So it's not necessarily not going to be about you. And this is also where I've kind of taken a different, I think, direction or different path in doing the retrograde videos, doing the Saturn in Aries video and everything. And even in my Saturn return video for those of you guys who are having it, I was like, take what people tell you with a grain of salt, because really the transit is gonna be what you make of it. You can certainly get a lot of good help, but it's gonna be a lot about personal development, personal building, and how you go about kind of exercising your authority and also your visions and really applying a lot of personal accountability throughout that process growing up. Right. So it got me thinking about Neptune. Obviously, Neptune's modern association with Pisces is about storms, stormy weather, right? We saw a bunch of weird foggy things happening throughout the United States the last couple of months. There has been some epic storms that have been kind of going on, and we've seen the destruction that has kind of happened from that. We have also seen a lot of people who I think have just been living in a constant state of fear and like panic, questioning what's real, what's not real, what's going on, what's going to happen. And that's been, I think, further kind of perpetuated with Mercury and Venus's retrogrades around the North Node, Saturn, Neptune points, is because the truth is we don't really know where we're going. We just know we're moving on from where we've been. And moving forward is a scary thing. But on the topic of storms, and I've noticed this in Texas. I've lived in Texas now for about 3 years, and something that really kind of threw me off when I first started kind of coming through here and visiting, and then when I moved, is just how crazy and insane the weather is here. Obviously, Texas is huge. If you guys aren't Americans, you may not just realize the sheer size of Texas, but I remember the first week that we moved here from Nevada, it was like the first day we moved, we moved in December. It was probably about, 65 degrees, clear skies, everything was normal. The next day, we're unpacking the house, and then it starts raining, and then all of a sudden you hear hail, and hail's coming down so hard that we were afraid it was going to shatter some of the windows in the new house that we moved into, open up the back door, the dogs are freaking out. I'm like, where did we move? Then the next day it's 80 degrees outside, and it's like sunshine, and it was just like this whiplash of like weather. But I've seen so many like crazy storms having been in Texas, and just the different parts of Texas, and seeing just how it kind of hits the coast, or how it will hit the northern part of Texas and then suddenly start, snowing, or, we see crazy issues with flooding. I remember driving back from New Orleans with my husband back in through Texas. And as we were driving, just seeing the rain coming down and the water level kind of rising as you're going over some of those bridges, as you're getting from one state to the other. And it's taught me a lot, I think, living here, that it's just like storms don't ask for permission, right? They just show up. And they show up sometimes in some very, very destructive ways. And so can the Saturn-Neptune conjunction literally be, how storms are impacting or affecting, individuals? Yeah, 100%. But in a more kind of figurative sense, I think the Neptune energy of Aries is how we are creating storms, how we are showing up and, going through a stormy period of our life, or we are creating that storm and we're just being kind of chaotic, and it's just all of a sudden everything all at once. And storms don't ask for permission, they appear. I feel like the storm that we've been in the last couple of months has been previews of what is to come. But it's also showing us where we have perhaps been stuck in fear, and there has potentially been the more kind of facade side of Neptune, where there has been a lot of chaos and things that has been created to scare us and keep us from being able to move forward. So a lot of 2025, I think, is about becoming aware that that's there, that there can be some things that are coming up where we're afraid because we've never done something before. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how to make a change. We don't know how to get out of our own way. But this year is going to be about kind of recognizing and realizing where those fears are, right? So who is this going to be impacting the most? Well, there's going to be like a hodgepodge of people. So, I think right off the bat, Aries, sun, moon, and risings are going to be feeling this the most. If you have anything Aries, sun, moon, or rising, I would say between 0 and 5 degrees, you're really going to be feeling the effects of this conjunction really for the next several years. It may not be exactly conjunct at the same time. If you happen to have anything, I would say 0 to about 2 degrees of Aries, you're kind of in the direct line of fire. But I would go all the way up to about 5 degrees as well. Same thing if you have any personal planets in Aries, 0 to about 5 degrees. The conjunction itself will be at 0, but you will be feeling it all around those degrees. Now, Saturn and Neptune will retrograde. We're going to see this in the fall. It's going to go back into Pisces. Neptune's going to hang out around 29. Saturn's going to do about the same. So if you happen to have anything 27 to 29 degrees of Pisces, you're going to get a brief kind of reprieve here over the next couple of months. And then Saturn and Neptune's actually going to retrograde back. But you're still within range of a couple of degrees, right? We're going to see, Saturn and Neptune kind of linger around 0 degrees the next couple of months, and then they're going to go like back into Pisces. So you'll be feeling that. I would also say 0 to 5 degrees of the cardinal signs. You're going to be feeling that because you're going to be experiencing a square. So if it's a Cancer, sun, moon, or rising, Libra, sun, moon, or rising, Capricorn, sun, moon, or rising, if you have anything about 0 to 5 degrees, you're going to be feeling that pretty intensely. And I can vouch for that. I have 0 degree Libra rising, the retrogrades right along my descendant, and also the Neptune ingress, and now Saturn showing up. I'm just kind of like, this is wild. Some of the stuff I'm seeing is wild. So I don't know, I'll definitely come back and give you guys some updates when Saturn gets there. But I think that because the Saturn-Neptune cycles, they happen every 36 years, it's a marker. It's actually going to be showing us where there is going to be something is going to be forged, right? And likely through heat or through some kind of action or passion or conflict, something is being forged. Saturn, obviously, and Neptune together, it's a little bit of like a paradox because Saturn is structure. This is all about discipline and hard truth. And Saturn is really kind of like the teacher who doesn't want to let you off the hook. And I think because Neptune is so different than that, Neptune is more about dreams and sensitivity and illusions and spirituality. Neptune can come in and it can actually soften reality. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. If we're not too kind of like focused and we don't have enough, boundaries and awareness and strictness and groundedness, we could lose ourselves to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But on the flip side, Neptune can come in and it can soften some of, the edges around Saturn's kind of strictness. It could actually bring spirituality, to Saturn's kind of practices. Saturn-Neptune conjunctions in natal charts, I know some of you guys have them, whether it goes back to 89, 90, or you go back another 36 years. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in a sense where literally what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But it's a curse because it's this reoccurring theme that's going to be like, yes, this brought grief, this brought loss. Neptune is isolation, it's separation. But the lessons that come from that is definitely going to be kind of fused through Saturn. So we're going to see basically, when they meet, it's like I said, it's like fever dreams, and it's a clash of what's real and what we wish was real. So every 36 years, we see a conjunction. It's going to happen in different signs, and it shakes things up. What it does is it dissolves old systems, and it sparks new visions, especially in this particular sign. So if we think back to 1989, the last time we had this conjunction, it was in Capricorn. Obviously, we know, right, the Berlin Wall fell, but walls fell literally and figuratively. The internet began connecting us in ways that we couldn't imagine. And I think now in Aries, it's very personal. It's very much about also us personally and the collective, our place in the collective, because Neptune has that association modern day wise with Pisces. Now, Aries, the archetype of Aries obviously is the warrior, right? Or the pioneer. And it's known as like the spark of the zodiac. It's the I am. It's all about, knowing also where you stand, finding your fixed point, and it's kind of like a star or a landmark, and you're letting that guide you forward, right? One of my favorite podcasts that I've been listening to, I think in recent months, probably last year or two, has been Ideas Have Consequences. You guys should check his work out. I think he's really great in the way that he goes about navigating, kind of being able to, speak to, I think, people who are critical thinkers, a little bit more conscious, a little bit more aware. But he's actually like a pastor, which is really interesting. He actually studies, theology, and he does all kinds of philosophical and like religious debates. And Taunton is just amazing. But he gave a whole lecture where he was talking about knowing your fixed point when you're on a boat or when you're on something that's moving. Unless you're looking at something that's standing still and grounded, you don't really know what direction you're going in. You could be sailing in the completely, wrong direction, and then suddenly you get lost at sea. And listening to that, I was like, wow, something clicked. I was like, that's very Saturn Neptune. That's like, if you don't know where you stand on a matter, if you don't know exactly what your reality is or what you believe in, and like ground into that spiritually, religiously, philosophically, whatever, there is this need, I think, to kind of lose yourself, right, with Saturn and Neptune. Anyway, I highly recommend listening to that. And when I say fixed point, it's also interesting because when we think of that, we need to have a fixed point so we can kind of like steer our ship, right? Which is also like very like captain of the sea, Saturn, Neptune. And when you think about the natal chart and you think about the ascendant, in Hellenistic astrology, it was seen as the helm of the ship, right? That is the kind of like where you're steering. Everything is kind of going from that point. Very much Aries. So I think a lot of us are trying to figure out, well, what is our viewpoint? Where is our fixed point? Where is it that we want to kind of have a little bit more connectedness and clearer vision, and also like clearer beliefs, right? About ourselves, about the world, so on and so forth. Now, the kicker here is that this conjunction, like I said, that's happening it's going to be right around February 2026. It's going to be at 0 degrees of Aries. So this is the very first degree of the zodiac. It's a cardinal point. It's got pure potential. This is the same point where, like I said, in the Northern Hemisphere, we just have spring. And similar to Aries energy, and also similar to the reference I made of the storms, spring doesn't ask if it can come. It just shows up. The frost starts melting, the birds come out, things start growing, everything starts getting warmer, and it's like life comes back, right? If you're somewhere that has seasons at least. So I think that this is interesting because it's very true to the nature of Aries. We're just going to see things start happening, and we've definitely seen a lot of things that have just like started happening throughout the transits the last couple of months with these retrogrades. It's really, I think it's a threshold. Like when you go through the 0 degrees Aries point, it's like, okay, this new initiation or this new birth has kind of happened. It's begun. So historically, 0 degree cardinal points, they signify or they signal new beginnings. And sometimes it can be explosive when you're dealing with the 0 degrees of Aries, right? Especially when you think about just how combative the nature, that raw kind of Aries Martian energy can be. So I do think that there could be some explosive events and things that are happening in our own lives that are kind of going off, and stuff that's happening that's like sparking something that initiates something new. And it can be hard. It can be harsh reality checks with Saturn and Neptune. I do think that, with Saturn's ability to focus on reality and Neptune's visions colliding here, we're going to see some significant events for mankind. I don't always like to warmonger or speculate because we don't know. A lot of it's going to depend on, what have we learned over the last couple of months with these retrogrades? Where is Mars going to be at the time of the conjunction? How is it being aspected? So there's some connections there, and I'll get into it. But I feel like, it could be a number of things. It doesn't necessarily have to mean war. It could mean that there's going to be some new rebirth, or beginning, or some new initiation that could be of like a religious or spiritual nature, right? I keep thinking it's going to be like this like spiritual awakening that mankind is like waking up. I think that's definitely possible. Obviously, Neptune's influence here could also be really about birthing a new faith or dissolving old dogmas. And so I do think it's going to create a major shift in the way that people look at organized religion as well as spiritual beliefs, and also anything revolving around identity, particularly identity to culture, to religion, to your nation, and, that's going to be like a huge thing. You can't get around that. Aries is very much about I am. And whether it's I am what I do for a living, or I am a part of this religion, or I am from this country, you're going to see a lot of people who are going to be wanting to identify themselves with something, and they're not going to be very shy about it. That's just the nature of Aries. Now, I think that we could also see a start of a new collective phase where humanity is, redefining itself. And I've heard a lot of people talk about the reset, the great reset. And I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I think that the Saturn Neptune conjunction and the aspects that we're going to see to Pluto is really speaking to the fact that humanity is waking up collectively to the fact that we are in some kind of crisis. You name it. It could be a global crisis, an economic crisis, health crisis, political crisis, whatever. And so we are now starting to think about, okay, do we want to be held captive by this particular crisis? So much about Saturn and Neptune could literally be about, enslavement, or, being a prisoner to something, or being stuck in something. But only if we are not willing to get outside of those walls and realize that it's like an invisible, kind of prison that we're kind of putting ourselves in. So I think that some of the sextiles to Pluto is that we're also kind of feeling our way through some of the collective crisis. And the positive is that you're going to have some people that are going to go, that's not my vision for humanity. That's not my vision for the future. I don't like that. I'm going to do something about it. And so we can see some really amazing individuals kind of wake up that can actually lead the pack, quite literally, in Aries, in coming up with solutions and trying to figure things out and trying to kind of find ways to actually bring about more freedom for individuals, and the collective impact that can have. So sextiles can kind of go one way or another depending on the planets that you're dealing with. And these are definitely some heavy hitting planets. I do think that, when I say reset, it's more along the lines of where humanity is coming together and saying, we are going to change the way that we're doing things moving forward, right? And that could be the reset in itself. But whatever it is, this is not going to be subtle at all. I feel like the next couple months are literally pedal to the metal. You guys are going to see as planets are shifting into outer planets into air and fire signs, that things are just going to be go, go, go. And it's likely going to produce a number of events that are going to spark or could light a fire across the globe. Obviously, unveilings of information and individuals becoming more so aware, where they've been held accountable for things that they may not have necessarily done. I think a lot about what's going on with, the state of the planet and stuff connected to geoengineering, things that are connected to storms, environmental concerns. Literally Saturn, Neptune, and Aries is where people are, having to relocate because of flooding or because of fires, where they're losing their homes or they're losing their jobs. And then suddenly they're well, what is my purpose? And so you got to be kind of careful with Saturn, Neptune conjunctions, because if there is always a storyline, and this could be more for people who have it natally, but there's always a storyline of oh, this horrific thing happened, this ended, that died, I lost that. But then there's the redemption story that's going to come from it. That's what did I learn? And I think that's going to be especially true actually with Aries, because Aries, like I said, is kind of the hero. But the catch here, I think, really is that one of the downsides of Saturn and Neptune in this sign, and I've been meditating on this for the last couple of months, and I keep asking, well, what is it that we need to be aware of? I know there's always a Saturn, Neptune. There's something that we don't always see so clearly, and that we have to kind of learn to either have a really strong faith or to be better about being grounded and not allowing certain things to kind of flood in. And I got this image of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay, truth be told, I had to literally go and look up where that phrase came from and what that means. Obviously, if you see sheep, they've got this cute, fuzzy, little puffball body. And sometimes even when they run around and they frolic, you can see the snow on their fur. But a wolf in sheep's clothing is literally a wolf running and frolicking and playing in the snow. And that when you can see wolves kind of coming up to doors or windows or being on property, it might kind of look like a sheep, but then the closer you get, you realize, oh, that's not a sheep, that's a wolf. Right? You see the teeth, you see the snout, then you realize it's not something that's fuzzy and friendly. And the message that I got was that Saturn and Neptune in Aries would be a wolf in sheep's clothing. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know if this is going to indicate that, somebody who's coming forward saying that they want peace, that they want purity, that they want healing. Obviously we think of a sheep, we think of a lamb, right, as something that's pure, right? It's sacrificial, especially across so many different religions, that can be something that can be clearing and cleansing. I mean, literally Lamb of God, right? So I was like, what does that mean? And then the more that I thought about it, I was like, it means that there are going to be some things coming. And certainly Saturn could be governments, it could be leadership, it could be up and coming new politicians, it could be sports stars, it could be all kinds of people, wellness gurus, fitness gurus, whatever, that are going to say, hey, I have the way. I can show you the way to enlightenment. I can make this all go away. I can help you. I come in peace. We don't want war. We don't want conflict. And I think the message is that the predators, right, in the world, the bad guys, are not going to look as obvious, which is kind of the irony there, because Aries is in your face. But I don't think it's going to be as obvious. And I think that this is kind of like a double meaning. So on one hand, it could mean that, some of these new characters that are coming out in our own lives, or even out in the world, they're disguising themselves as sweet or innocent, or even as like spiritual heroes, saviors, a therapist, a partner, right? A friend, a job, like a new lifestyle that's so glittery and like alluring. But then we realize like, okay, actually, the more we look closer and we look at the energy of it, we realize that, it's not what we think it is. And then the other side of this is, because Aries is the self, is that the closer we look at the situation, rather than projecting onto other people and saying, well, it's this, it's that, it's this ailment, I got divorced, or, this happened to me when I was a kid. That's very Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces. It's more the martyrism. It's more the victim mentality. When Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, unfortunately, one of the other sides of this is that we are going to recognize, we are going to see where we have been fooling ourselves, where, we have been masquerading as something that we are not, or maybe we have been, buying into something, hoping it was going to save us, or it was going to be a quick fix, or it was, maybe not our faults. And then we're going to realize, whoa, like we're on our own out here now. And so I think a lot of this is going to be exposed. I think we're going to see a lot of people who are going to have a really challenging time when it comes to kind of recognizing and realizing that maybe, we've had imposter syndrome, and we have thought that we are what we do, or we've been portraying a side of ourselves that may not actually be authentic. And we're going to start to see the harm that that's actually doing to us personally, being in denial, right? Or not actually, being proactive, or maybe wanting to be avoidant of a situation, or not looking at something, and then finally getting to a point where it's like, no, actually it's me. And it's funny, I have a lot of clients that are therapists. I have clients that are therapists that are confirming with me that people are waking up. They're realizing this. They're taking accountability, which is good. They're also telling me that they're recognizing and realizing that there are situations going on where their clients have been almost like too dependent on them, to the point where they can't make a decision, or they can't do anything without checking in with them. And so now they're realizing that it's changing the way that they're doing their practice, and they're shifting and taking a step back, or they're kind of going about their practice with them differently. I'm seeing the same thing with my clients. I've had so many like moments, I think, over like the last like month, that I was like, oh my God, like this is not what I thought it was. Or, like me realizing like, well, I have no one to blame but myself in this situation. So I'm seeing it as well. I don't know if you guys are seeing it, but I definitely feel like this is a big piece of the puzzle. But the positive here is that with Saturn conjunct Neptune, we can choose accountability over escape, right? We can choose that. And that might sound scary or difficult, but I feel like with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, Saturn is going to say, own who you are. Face your limits and hold or build something real. And Neptune in Aries is going to whisper, okay, dream big, trust your vision. And together they can be this call for action, but it can also be a warning. It can be a warning about asking yourself or coming to some realization. And I have found questions have been really helpful so far with all the Aries stuff, like talking to myself, asking yourself, like, are you truly free? Saturn, Neptune. That's a good question. Saturn, Neptune. Are you truly free? Especially individuals, the facade of freedom. Are you free to do what you want in the country you live in? Are you free to travel? Are you really free to communicate? Are you really free in a relationship? Or is freedom a facade? And I think a lot of this is also about, clinging to a false conception of freedom. And for a lot of people, that can be really difficult because they thought that they had it, only to kind of realize that they may not have had it all along. Maybe it can be where you've convinced yourself that you're healthy or that you're spiritual or that you're in control, but it's like a lie that you want to believe. So in 2025, as we're pulling back this curtain and we see Saturn and Neptune, kind of dancing in Aries briefly before the conjunction next year, we are starting to kind of get glimmers of some of these illusions. It's a preview year. It's really like a taste of what's coming in 2026. And I feel the need to kind of like sound the alarm and tell people, this is a year that we want to focus now more than ever on personal accountability, right? That's my phrase for the rest of the year, personal accountability. When I catch myself being like, well, they did this, I'm like, no, what could I have done differently, to prevent that from happening? And if it was nothing, it was nothing. But certainly I have been more aware of some of the things I could have or should have done, and now learning from that and applying it differently rather than giving the same opportunity over and over and over and being like, no, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not going to continue to keep having the same cycles over with people, because I feel like that's also in a way enabling other people to kind of continue the behavior. And I think that there has been so much with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, this kind of like lackadaisical, it's fine, we'll do it, it's fine, oh, you're sick, or this or that's going on. And the impact that that's having on individuals now is like super, super, super challenging and very difficult. So I feel like personal accountability, especially with this 0-degree Aries energy, it's amplifying that. And the accountability is important because we're doing something new. It's not just different. We're doing something new because Pisces is what's concluding or completing. Now we have to go in a completely new direction. We have to do things that we have never done before, that we've never dreamed we would ever do. So obviously with Saturn-Neptune connections, something else that comes up that is a theme, and I think it's going to be more personal because it's in the sign of Aries, is addiction, right? Addiction, self-sabotage, knowing our limits, how much we should or should not be sleeping, how much TV we're watching, doom scrolling, how much you're drinking, drugging, smoking, whatever. And self-sabotage definitely kind of comes in here. You can't talk about a Neptune transit without that. The self is Aries. I mean, it's quite literal in the astrology. So, I think a lot of people are going to be needing to finally come to terms with where habits or addictions or certain lifestyles have been scapegoats. And really, it's about easy excuses to dodge hard work. Aries is going to be about physical manual work, labor, fitness, accountability, your body, right? All that stuff. And it's about facing ourselves. It's this, I can't do it because of this habit, or I'm stuck because of that mistake, right? Saturn's going to come in and it's going to say, nope, not my problem. No more hiding, and Saturn and Neptune and Aries can seem a little bit more, it's not soft like Pisces. It's going to be a little bit more in your face. It's going to be more like a drill sergeant. It's going to feel mean. It's definitely going to have this energy of saying, no, don't do this, or this is the boundary, but it's looking out for you for a good reason. Neptune is where actually, you could become too soft, or you could, get scammed, or you could get sick, or you could become addicted, or you could become, more so self-isolating. So, obviously Neptune is going to tempt you with the escape, but, Aries at that 0-degree point, the energy is too direct. It's too bold to just let us off the hook. So I think we're going to have to ask, are we proving ourselves to the world, or are we just trying to convince ourselves that we're okay? And we've all done this, right? I have Aries moon. We've all done this. We've all been like, everything's fine. And then on the inside, you're like, ah! And then it's really not. And a lot of it is about trying to find that middle ground where we're not just totally letting everything kind of go by the wayside and making excuses, but by the same token, we're kind of owning up to what's been kind of boiling, beneath the surface, and dealing with it, and not just acting like everything is okay and not using that as an excuse to not move forward either. So it's about cutting through the fever dreams. It's about starting new. And I feel like that new beginning is going to be with a new faith within ourselves. And the flaws and everything, it's going to be there. I mean, that's what I'm excited about the most about Aries, is I think that Saturn and Neptune is going to very much be without the filters, without the flaws, that have been hidden. We've seen several years of Neptune in Pisces. Now the North Node is still there, but Saturn has been there. Retrogrades have been there. I feel like our whole perception of reality is distorted. You open up your Instagram, you see a bunch of perfect people who don't have stretch marks, who don't have acne, who don't have bad hair days, who just like look amazing, right? And so some of us can get so like hard on ourselves about being like, well, why don't I look like that or this or that? Like, like these people don't work for a living. Of course they're going to look really good, right? But also it could be other things. Why do they have all of this money? Why do they have all of this happiness, this success? There's filters, there's facades, there's definitely a lot of things that are being kind of put up there that is distorting our reality. And so everything has been made to look soft and the lighting is perfect and everything is great and everybody's got, this like amazing lifestyle. But as Saturn and Neptune come into Aries, we are going to actually start seeing collectively that what's going to be more, I think, successful, what's going to be more so applauded is going to be authenticity, is going to be raw, unfiltered. This is what I look like. This is what healing looks like. And healing is not going to, be linear. It's going to be messy. You're going to get angry. You're also going to see people who are going to have days where they're not looking good or days where, they don't feel like it, but they're going to the gym and they're just processing and kind of working through things and they're holding themselves accountable. And bare faces, bald heads, bad hair days, scars, acne, right? These are going to be things that we're going to see. And it's going to be like, what the heck? Like, this is not stuff that we have seen in recent years. Authenticity is just going to be so much more, I think, bold and unique and different. And something that people are going to kind of like look up to, I personally think. Because Aries could also be about all like the battle wounds and the scars and the things that we had, rather than covering it up. It's going to be like, no, I've been through that. I lived through that. This is the experience that I've had. Why would I want to hide that? And those are going to be the people who are going to be edgy. Those are going to be the people who are going to be different. And I feel like flaws and all, it's going to kind of start to be kind of bared throughout the next couple of months, because the collective clock is ticking. We're not going to want to live in this facade kind of universe anymore. Now, obviously, there's a very emotional edge to this conjunction. We see, with Saturn and Neptune, we're going to see some people that are going to have anxiety. We're going to see some people who are going to have doubt. We're going to see some people who are going to have that authenticity. And the truth is that we might be a little bit all over the place before we kind of get there. And that's okay. Saturn takes about 2.5 years to go through a sign. But I think that, starting fresh is not easy. We've all been there, right? Like we've all been there where it's like, okay, I have to start going to the gym, and that you don't want to get up and you don't want to go. But like once you get into the habit where you've been going for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you're like, this is a part of my day. It becomes easy, but it didn't start that way. There was a lot of resistance, right? There was a lot of dragging your feet, not wanting to go, making excuses. And Aries is about fresh starts. So I think especially, at this tipping point, with Saturn and Neptune being there, uncertainty is going to hit. And it's going to be like this sense of being like, okay, I'm moving forward. Ooh, am I doing that? Is this happening? Because Saturn is like, nope, we go forward anyway. It reminds me of like, have you guys ever heard of the 7-mile jump, 7-mile hike that they have in Los Angeles? It's like closer over to, I want to say like Pasadena, Altadena, somewhere over there. Where you have to literally hike 7 miles. And then once you have hiked through the 7 miles, which is like crazy rugged terrain, there's like random bighorn sheep and all kinds of stuff. You get to this big bridge and then you can go bungee jumping. So I decided to do this. Truth be told, was a little wild in my 20s. I was going with a group of friends who were they were Marines, and I didn't know it was going to be a 7-mile hike. I had no idea. So I wasn't fully prepared for that, but whatever. I did it anyway. I was like, I'm down to go bungee jumping. We hang out, everybody's partying the night before. We get up early the next morning, we go, and I'm like, this is not going to be fun. So it was like very much my Saturn Neptune moment. Like, why did I put myself in that situation? Hike all the way the 7 miles, get to the bridge. We get up to the top of the bridge, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go bungee jumping. We're going to do this. And as I'm, putting on the harness, getting everything on, I'm sitting there, I straddle the side of the bridge, have one leg over, throw the other leg over. Nobody tells you, and probably because it's like this inherent like human thing, right? We're not supposed to be climbing bridges. There was like an invisible wall there, and I can't throw my leg over the other side of the bridge. And I'm like, I physically can't do this. There's something stopping me. And the guy is like talking me through it. It's fine. It's okay. Put your hands on my shoulders. Walk to the platform. Everything's good. And I'm like, I can't walk. I literally cannot walk. Now my legs don't work. What's going on? I'm hitting this invisible wall. And so it reminds me of that, the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. It's like the things that we know maybe that we want to do, but we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know if it's safe. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and now we're here. And I'm sure you guys have probably seen this in some of like the bungee jumping videos, but he's like, just stand on the platform. You're fine. You're okay. Okay. Are you fine? You're okay. And he's like, all right, I'm not going to do anything. And he goes, poof, and he pushes me off the platform. Reminds me of Saturn and Neptune and Aries. It's like we're coming up to this point where we're like, okay, I'm going to do it. I don't know if I'm going to do it. And then Saturn's like, you're going to do it. And it's going to push us, So I think that anxiety comes up a lot, doubt, fear. I mean, whenever we're dealing with Neptune. And for me, something that's been really helpful, and I heard this listening to like a wellness podcast a couple of months ago, but somebody was saying, you don't want to say, I'm anxious, right? You want to say, I feel anxious about. We want to name it, but we don't want to claim ownership of the anxiety. Because once you say, I have anxiety, you're creating that vibration, and you're also saying, I'm going to carry that with me like a badge of honor, and I'm never going to let it go. And then it becomes this kind of like excuse and reason for why we don't do things. So you want to name it. You want to name your fears, right? And, also if you're having doubt about your capabilities, fear is about working through something or somewhere that you have never been before, right? And fear is going to come up for a lot of people. I think there's going to be, on one hand, fear of people that are fearful of being exposed as a fraud. And this is why I talked about imposter syndrome, because I feel like it's going to hit very hard under this conjunction for some people, especially as we're pushed to be real. But I also feel like there's going to be this fear of, what if it doesn't work? What if it all collapses? What if it doesn't come together? And I have found that the most helpful thing, being a Saturn Neptune person myself, is when that comes up, I'm like, but what if it does? What if everything works out and everything's great and it's better than I thought it was? And it's like, we don't often think about that. We always think about worst case scenario. And it's really easy to think worst case scenario when you're dealing with Saturn and Neptune. But I would encourage you guys maybe to apply some of these things to how you've been kind of thinking about what's been going on in your own life, because I feel like this is really pushing us to be real. Something that comes to mind also is like authenticity, right? Saturn and Neptune is about authenticity when it comes to who we are. And are we at our core on the inside, what we're projecting on the outside, right? And that could mean, you might look really healthy, everything's great, but on the inside, your mental health could be horrible. Your blood work could be horrible. Like there could be a lot of stuff going on psychologically or emotionally. That's just a wreck, right? But you look good, and that's not actually going to be health. Health is not just going to be about, how we look. It's also going to be that connection to the mind, body, spirit. Now, authenticity, like I said, that's a huge thing that comes up for Aries. I kept thinking about Saturn and Neptune, and it's like, I think something that I've learned being an Aries moon, but also I think over the transits the last couple of years is like, I just want to be myself. Like, I don't want to be like everyone else. Everybody else is already taken. I would like to be different. I don't want to feel like I want to be a part of the crowd. Obviously you guys know that Oscar Wilde quote, I assume, but there's something very epic and I think very relational about showing up and being yourself. I think that if you're showing up as you are, imperfections in all, then you're going to navigate this transit a lot better. And I think with 0 degrees Aries, it's a mask that won't hold. Like if we try to put up a facade or we try to say, I'm this, but you're not, like that Saturn Neptune is going to break that mask really quick. And it's going to show you, are they who they really say they are? And I don't care if it's a religious or a spiritual faith leader. I don't care if it's a politician, if it's a movie star. I don't care if it's it doesn't matter, and it could be that it's so much more obvious now who's using plastic surgery, who's drinking and drugging, who is the, like the false messiah or somebody who claims to be, like the next big thing. And then we just realize that it's a facade. It's just a big scam. So it's going to be harder, I think, to fake it. And I think coming from years of fake it till you make it with Saturn and Neptune in Aries and having had, Jupiter in Aries a couple years, Jupiter in Pisces, all of that is very smoke and mirrors. And now that we're moving away from that, we're going into Aries. It's like, yeah, we have to focus on what's real. And I think the power really lies in what we choose next. Aries is what we start. And so this year we're getting a little bit of like a head start on how we should be thinking, what we should be doing, right? And I think that, something else that kind of comes up for me is that this period could also be, kind of seen as us realizing that we're detaching from the past. We no longer want to be tied to what happened to us. Pisces is the past. It's really about, the changes that we're making and tackling things head on. And now we're kind of shifting into focusing on what we wish to become, right? So if you guys have been going through, some of these storms, it's about recognizing and realizing that you can come back from them. If you want to come back from those storms, you can come back from them, but come back from them with a sense of awareness with, okay, this has happened. This came up to show me something I needed to work through. Now, where am I going? Right? All right. So just as like a review, the last 36-year cycle that we had, the Saturn Neptune conjunction was in Capricorn. But the last time we had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction that was this close, it was actually in Pisces, and it was in the 1850s. We were seeing the two planets kind of going in and out of Pisces and Aries. For me, just thinking about what kind of happened at that point in a nutshell, I see it as, this is something that's, I've heard a couple of people say, it's like suicidal empathy. And I don't mean that in a sense of actual suicide, so trigger warning. It's more like, we've been doing things collectively, and it was going on also in the mid 1850s. We were doing things collectively where we were losing ourselves, we were losing our culture, we were even losing control of our collective ideas because of virtue signaling, because of we were afraid of what other people were going to think, because of religious pressure, social pressure, things like that going on. And so I think about all the sacrifices and the things that happened the last time we saw like that Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, where it was just everything that we need to do because of what was going on in the world and what was developing spiritually and culturally, and also global trade was becoming a thing. Now this time it's happening in Aries. And I think that this is a rebirth of not just the self, but also what we do, and therefore shape what's going to be the new beginning for the collective. Yes, the shift from dissolution to, I think, igniting something is all about reclaiming our identity. And it's not about masquerading as somebody else any longer. It's not about burying our head in the sand. It's about actually taking this moment to decide, do I face this, right? Or do I keep fooling myself? Because for a lot of us, when 2026 hits, that conjunction is going to be a matchstick. And it doesn't matter if it's a matchstick that happens, out in the world or in our own world. It could be war, spiritual awakening, some kind of dawn of a new era is going to be happening. But I think that we have to really kind of look at some of the stuff that's going on in our life right now. And I think that that's really where the real work begins. So hopefully that's kind of helpful in giving you guys a little bit of insight, at least some of my food for thought on how I view this transit, some of the awareness that's kind of come up for me also like the last couple of months. You have heard me talk so much about the area of Aries in your chart that you should know where it is at this point. But if you don't, then go and check out a birth chart calculator online, or look at your chart, figure out which house Aries is in. That is the house that you're going to see Saturn and Neptune going through. Good news, you've had 2 years of eclipses in Aries, a retrograde with Mercury, a retrograde with Venus, and a solar eclipse that has all kind of kicked all of that off. Now Neptune is there, so things might feel a little fuzzy, but Saturn's going to be showing up pretty soon. While this conjunction is not going to be taking place until around February 20th, 2026, both Saturn and Neptune are actually going to be in Aries much sooner than that. So you will see both of these planets together at the end of May in this sign. Now Neptune's going to be hovering around 1 degree and change. Saturn is going to enter in, and that's going to be at the end of May here. All right. So you'll have basically May until the fall to kind of work through some of this Saturn-Neptune stuff. Going to be really interesting to see what happens. I'll be creating more videos as we get closer to some of these ingresses. So if you guys haven't already seen my Jupiter and Cancer video, my Saturn and Aries video, if you haven't seen my Uranus and Gemini video, I did a preview of all of these, but not only because I wanted something to look forward to, because I feel like the future can be bright with some of these transits. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only astrologer saying this. I know there's other astrologers saying this. This is some really otherworldly astrology that we're seeing this year and next year. Not only do we see this conjunction and it's happening at that 0 degree, but Pluto is sextiling it, and this is also going to be sextiling what will be Gemini, Uranus and Gemini. So we're going to be seeing both trines as well as sextiles both ways, which is going to also heavily influence some of this. And I'll be talking about that as we kind of get closer. Anyway, I just want to give you guys a quick rundown for each and every one of the 12 rising signs. So to make the most of my videos, I really recommend listening to your rising sign first. That's going to tell you exactly which house this conjunction is taking place in. Honestly, I really recommend using, whole sign or Placidus. It doesn't matter because this conjunction will officially be in 2025 at 0 degrees. You could definitely use whole signs and it will resonate. But if you're a Placidus user, you can look for about 0 to 2 degrees of Aries in your chart and see where that conjunction is. And I'm going to give you guys some insight about what I think it means for this up and coming conjunction. So get the ball rolling, get the show on the road, I think, this year, so you're kind of better prepared next year. All right, so this is for my Western whole sign predictions. I'm going to start with my Aries risings. Certainly you guys are, the stars of the show, right? I feel like you and Pisces risings are the ones who are definitely kind of embodying in a much more physical, obvious way a lot of these transits. And if you are an Aries rising, you might want to get yourself a Pisces rising friend and ask them about what they have been feeling and kind of experiencing throughout the transit over this last year, having had both Saturn and Neptune in the same sign, because it's going to be kind of similar to what you're going to be experiencing. Now, Aries, obviously, this is happening in your first house. So if you have an Aries moon, it's going to more correlate to your emotions, your home, your private life, your family. If you have an Aries sun, it might be more about your identity, your creative process. It could also be about your career. So you have to look at the house and the aspects. But Aries risings, the theme here is about identity, self-expression, and authenticity. And I think that you have already had a bit of like a preview with the retrogrades and the eclipses in your first house as to just what exactly is changing within yourself. I do feel like you guys are going to be facing a reckoning. To me, it feels like it's with who you truly are versus who you've pretended to be. Some of you guys might be feeling like you're having imposter syndrome. That is possible. It could peak, but so will your will and your courage to redefine yourself. So if you feel lost, if you're having an identity crisis, you don't know who you are, you don't recognize yourself anymore, this could be a significant personal turning point that's marking a new beginning for you. And I feel like, to be brutally honest, this is about you accepting yourself the way that you are, flaws and all, embracing them. This is about starting to, be more so bold when it comes to your appearance, your style, how you're dressing, anything that's going to reflect your real self and also not someone else's expectations. Certainly, Saturn is going to be about responsibility for you. And it's also going to be a responsibility when it comes to your goals or when it comes to your career. And Neptune is going to be about self-sabotage or anything connecting to what you're hiding away from. So this is a time where personal accountability, I think, is big for Aries risings. And if you want to make some kind of personal changes, if you want to make some kind of strides in your career, if there are certain goals that you want to accomplish, now you're becoming more aware of where you've been afraid, where you have been kind of holding yourself back. And now you're kind of ready to start some of these new chapters. You just really want to focus on, not maybe always looking at, not seeing self-sabotage, number one, but self-sabotage for you could also be disguised as being independent. So it can be like, well, I'm independent. I don't need a relationship, or, I don't need to be working for somebody else. I'm going to work for myself. And it could mean that you're kind of like self-sabotaging you in some way. So be mindful of that. That can definitely kind of come up. And obviously health, physical, mental health, and also meditation practice and spiritual development can be really important for Aries placements. Okay. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know how that resonates and how this transit goes for you. All right, we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. What's up, Taurus? You're doing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries in 2025 and 2026 in your 12th house. I kind of look at this and I'm like, the Taurus risings are going to go through it, but nobody's really going to see it. Like, it's not going to be as obvious as some of the other signs. And a lot of that's because it's in the 12th house. Neptune's at home here, and Saturn is very comfortable in the 12th house. I feel like Saturn does very well here. So, the theme of the 12th house obviously is subconscious. It's spirituality. It's about your hidden fears, private spaces, private lands, things that deal with like karmic completions, endings, what's kind of happening in your dreams. Now, The theme here, I think, for you guys and what you're going to be working through is dreams and intuition will intensify. Like there might be intense feeling of like needing alone time, but you might also be dealing with anxiety or escapism issues. So, this could be about you uncovering a buried truth about yourself or confronting a secret enemy that's masquerading as a friend. Now, Saturn is connected to your career and your personal responsibility out in the world. It also has a connection to teaching, traveling, learning, publishing. So some of you guys might be like, I want to make some major changes to where I'm working, how I'm working. I'd like to be more behind the scenes. I'd like to have more time to study, to travel, to write, to learn, to just kind of be alone in nature. That's possible. And then obviously Neptune is associated with your friends and your goals. So there's a lot of like you kind of like being Oz in a way, where you're kind of orchestrating things and doing things behind the scenes. And that could be in a professional way, that could be in a social way. And I just feel like you guys are gonna need a little bit more time to yourselves than normal. So, I do think that if this were me, it would definitely be really positive for you guys to be meditating regularly or grounding your vision. Obviously being mindful and watching out for addictive tendencies, using them as a crutch, facing your shadows head on, and trusting your gut when something feels off. Now, fitness can become like your church. I know that sounds weird, but the 12th house is like temples and spiritual centers. And then Aries is obviously about heat and physical fitness. So a lot of you guys are going to be opting to be working out to work through some of your emotional or psychological blockages. You're going to be developing nighttime routines. You're going to work maybe in a private fitness studio. Maybe you're going to work with a trainer, hot saunas, hot yoga, like that kind of stuff could be really helpful for some of these placements that you're having in your chart. And I do feel like because the 12th house is the caterpillar kind of cocoon phase, there were some things that are kind of being seeded and being worked on for the next couple of years prior to Saturn coming into your sign, where there's going to be this new defining moment of who you are, what you look like, what you've been working on behind the scenes. So it doesn't matter if you get lost in a foreign country for a couple of years, or you go back to school and you get your doctorate, or you decide you want to spend several years working on your novel. When you emerge from this in a couple of years' time, you're going to be seen as somebody who's professionally and physically, very different. So it'll be really interesting to kind of see what comes of that period for you guys. You'll have to let me know what happens. Just meditate, trust your gut when something feels off, and face your shadows head on. All right, we've got Gemini rising. You guys are going to be doing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries in and out of 2025 and 2026. Truth be told, knowing that Uranus is going into your guys' sign, where you're going to be more spontaneous and open and willing to learn, travel, kind of be flexible. I think you're going to do better with this than some of the other signs because it's going to be sextiling Uranus in your sign. Okay, so there's that. There's something to be said about the spontaneity or the flightiness or the unpredictability and the impact that could be also having on your friendships, your networks, your goals, and your friends. Non-committal stuff can lead to some friendship issues, but you're making friends with the right people. You're aligning yourself with the right people. It can really help you when it comes to finding your voice. Seeing the Saturn-Neptune connection in your 11th house of community goals and social circles is great. Saturn is very comfortable in this house because of its traditional association with Aquarius. So I think that you'll navigate this better. I do think that something that you're going to want to watch for is that some friendships may either dissolve or transform with the conjunction. Some allies might reveal ulterior motives, and a visionary group project could launch, sparking a new collective direction. Now, Saturn has connections to your 9th house of culture, travel, higher education, beliefs. It also has connections to your 8th house of change, transformation, joint resources, and other people's money. So you might be having some psychological shifts revolving around how you look at friendships, what you're learning from friendships, people from different walks of life and different places around the world. I would just say, view your crew carefully. Don't fall for charismatic fakes. Lead with your own ideas, not with borrowed ones. Set long-term goals that are authentically yours. And this is about being a part of a group and a collective. You can't avoid friendships as well. Part of Saturn going through the 11th house is whether or not, you're actually meeting other people halfway. If you're contributing to a cause or something that you feel like very drawn or kind of committed to. And this could also mean with the connection with Neptune, which is tied to your 10th house, that you're working with a new work team, or you have a new career goal, or maybe you're getting out there and networking, or maybe you're starting a business with a friend. But it's about something brand new. So there's going to be some merger of career and goals, friends and goals and purpose. And I feel like for a lot of you guys, just the one thing you want to watch for is just not isolating yourself. You have to get out there and you have to participate with other people. If you feel like your friend group is dwindling, get out there, start a group, make friends out on your own. You can actually start fresh and you can make some friends with some really great people during some of these transits. Good luck. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the Saturn-Neptune connection in Aries happening 2025 and into 2026. Obviously, this isn't a sign that squares you, Cancer. So if you're like 0 to 5 degrees, you're going to be feeling the effects of the square, which honestly, kind of lights the chart up like a Christmas tree, because through some of the changes that are happening in the career, it is impacting you, your body, how you see yourself, as well as relationships, other people, and partnerships. And it's opposing your 4th house, where you might feel like you're being pulled out of your home, or there's some changes going on with home and family, as you're going to be more focused in the 10th. Positive is Saturn likes the 10th house. And this is a once in like a 28-year period. You have 28, 29 years to really focus on your career. So if you're an older Cancer rising, you can go back and you can look at what was happening in the mid-90s and what kind of phases were kind of coming together for you in terms of your professional life, and where you were kind of taking on some new challenge or responsibility within your career. Now, if you're not working, this can be a time where you go back to work, or you change direction with your work, or you launch your own business. Could even be a time for some of you where you're retiring, so it really depends. But the 10th house definitely deals with authority. So if not your career, it's authority figures, parents, it could be authority figures out in society. It could also be in connection also to, your responsibility, I think, out in the world. So really here, your professional life is likely going to hit a turning point, and it's either a bold new role or exposure of some kind of like false reputation. So authority figures might deceive, or you could step into leadership. It depends on how you play it. You want to be smart, really looking around, seeing what's kind of going on, this year, so you're better prepared for next year. The focus here is to build a career based on your vision and not other people's hype. You want to own your own achievements. You also don't want to let doubt derail you. And I think that this is about being weary of workplace saviors with hidden agendas. Now, Saturn is connected to both relationships as well as other people's money. So if it's not in a relationship sense, it could mean that, not in a business sense, it could be in a relationship sense. For some of you guys, you might be going into business with a partner or questioning if you should. For others, it could mean that there's a new potential business partnership brewing. For others, it could be whether or not, there is the necessary funds or financial support to actually make a new, career path come true. And it's for a lot of you guys dreaming up this new potential path and questioning whether or not you can swing it. Having a mentor or a teacher can help. Obviously, with Neptune's connection to the 9th house, the necessary training, the background, the experience, and you just want to be really mindful and wary of any potential like legal issues that can be coming from your professional life, because that can kind of happen with the Saturn-Neptune connection here. Might be a little bit more difficult if you have planets in Cancer that exactly square this. So you want to keep in mind with Saturn square, it can feel like some delays. With Neptune square, it can feel like you're not seeing things so clearly. But whatever's gone on the last couple of months is likely showing you what's getting ready to set up. And for some people, it can be the perfect recipe for getting ready to kind of like move into your dream career. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's just taking your time so that way you can make that dream a reality, especially going into 2026. I think that's pretty much it. So good luck, Cancer. Let me know what happens for you. And like I said, if it's not work related, it could be some big defining moments in relationships. All right, so we have got Leo and Leo rising. What's up, Leo? All right, so you're my first fire sign with this aspect. So if you have anything in Leo, sun, moon, or rising, like the first 5 degrees, this is actually pretty beneficial for you. It's going to be trying that area of your chart, and you're going to be tapping into Saturn's ability to commit to matters of the heart, and also Neptune's ability to be able to feel a little bit more divinely connected, a little bit more creative, a little bit more spiritually sensitive. So I do think that you guys might navigate this a little bit better than some of the other signs. Granted, it is also kind of playing with Pluto in your 7th house, so there could definitely be some dramatic shakeups, changes going on with relationships, clients, or business partners which could lead to Saturn Neptune things in the ninth. So for relationships to evolve, some people might need to get married, they might need to get divorced, they might need to move, relocate. There could also be a lot of learning lessons from relationships that can kind of come up from that. Now, in the ninth house, where you're having the Saturn-Neptune connection that's playing out from 2025 into 2026, the themes here are really about beliefs, exploration, and higher learning. So, a spiritual or philosophical awakening is very likely during this transit. Old beliefs can crumble. It can also be replaced by like a fiery new perspective. And travel or education is definitely some of the topics that could ignite some kind of personal evolution. I also feel like this could be big for going to college, getting a degree, becoming an educator, publishing a book. These are things that might happen under these transits. And you might be working side by side with another person because of Saturn's connection to your seventh house. So a partner can help you do that, a business manager. It could also be like a publishing agent. You could become a mentor. Somebody could mentor you. And I think a lot of this is about also like finding the time for developing new skills, traveling or learning because of Saturn's connection to your sixth house. Neptune does talk about like learning more about like a esoteric kind of spiritual divine nature. So I could see some people being like, yeah, I'm becoming a Pilates or a yoga teacher. Maybe I am, becoming a meditation coach. Maybe I'm going away to go and do a retreat where I'm getting certified for something. Those kind of things can be kind of coming up as there's like a combination of fitness with Aries, sixth house, health and wellness, and then the eighth house is going to be more about spiritual and metaphysical. But I do think you guys will navigate this a little bit better. I just feel like for you, this is really about, questioning dogma. And like there might be some teachers or there might be some authors or practitioners or people that you follow and you're like, okay, like, with this guru, are they cloaking control as wisdom, or, is it something that I can really believe in or trust? So you want to pursue knowledge really that excites you, not necessarily to impress other people. Obviously act on your faith. Don't just dream it. And this is about getting out and seeing the world, even if it means that you need to travel a little bit by yourself. Good luck, Leo. We've got Virgo and Virgo rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the Saturn-Neptune connection that's taking place in Aries 2025 into 2026. And this will be happening in your eighth house. So this is a house that is obviously not as visible, right? I always think of like the eighth house as almost like a cave or something that's kind of secretive or hidden. And the eighth house is about transformation in many ways, psychological, financial, in terms of intimacy. It can be about obviously death and rebirth, and it's about, dealing with some shadow stuff that we don't want to look at. And it can actually bring us immense amount of healing. It can also bring us wealth throughout this particular house as well, depending on what else is kind of going on. So, when we break it down, this is a sign that's in conjunct or quincunx, which basically means you guys don't have a lot in common. This is a Martian sign, you're a mercurial sign, Aries is still the self. So it's going to be about your relationship to secrets, your relationship to other people's money, to finances, to taxes, inheritances, but also like psychologically how you feel or think about yourself, right? What personal changes you're going through. I think with this transit, it's about deep change and that it's coming, possibly through a crisis or involving money, power, or trust. A partner's true colors, good or bad, might emerge and force a reckoning. And I would say, during this time, face any financial or emotional debts directly. Don't escape into denial. Protect your energy from manipulative victims and embrace vulnerability as a strength. Now, Saturn is connected, obviously, to your fifth house of love affairs, children, lovers, creativity, taking risks, and dating, and also your sixth house of health, habits, and routine. And Neptune is about relationships. So it is possible that you could be dealing with some inner child stuff. There could be some back and forth about children, having a child, and that kind of awakens something psychologically, going back and forth with a partner about whether or not you're going to have them, whether or not you're in love, or how you navigate a financial or a situation in regards to intimacy. So it's a number of different ways that you can play it, but I can tell you that I've never seen a eighth house transit that doesn't materialize as the end of one situation, the beginning of another. And so it can be a new relationship with yourself, but it could also mean there's a new therapist, but it comes on the heels of ending the therapist relationship. It could mean, Suddenly there's a lot of, money that goes out, but then there's money that comes in, but it comes from a significant change with a family member or partner, that kind of stuff. I do think that for you guys also, it's like a wake-up call to really start like embracing change and endings, because it paves the way for new beginnings, and like how you personally deal with death or grief or loss, or how you personally deal with vulnerability. And obviously getting like a handle on financial situations as well. So like debt, loans, that kind of stuff can come up here. Okay. All right. So good luck to you guys. Lots of financial, emotional, and relationship changes for my Virgos. And we've got Libra and Libra rising. What's up, Libra? All right, so Libra, this is in opposition to you. So if you're a Libra rising, sun, moon rising, 0 to 5 degrees, you're going to be feeling the effects of this pretty significantly from 2025 into 2026 as the Saturn Neptune conjunction is brewing. Libra, you can do the 7th house, right? Because that's the energy that you bring into the zodiac. So I always say this to my Libra risings because it helped me. The chart is inverted. Even though you have Libra in the 1st house, and this is about having relationships around you, the 7th house Aries is not just your relationship with other people, it's the relationship with yourself. Okay, so sometimes you'll see stuff that's going on with partners that's being projected onto you, stuff that you're doing or projecting onto other people. So you got to take that into consideration. Now, the themes obviously of the 7th house are relationships, partnerships, and balance. But as a Libra rising, I've also kind of realized that it's also been about confronting things. It has also been about diplomacy. It's also about receiving support from other people that may not necessarily be 7th house. So you think, oh, my boyfriend, girlfriend, my spouse, right? But it's like, my client, my business partner, it could be my manager, it could be my therapist, it could be my astrologer, all of that stuff. Those are all the people that you deal with. And this is also like a boxing ring. So it's like, literally having conflict and getting it out in the air can be the 7th house. Obviously, Saturn and Neptune going into your 7th house, I would say to Libra rising, look at what's happened the last couple of months. What's been going on there? What's been happening with relationships? Has there been relationship longing? And have you realized that now you really want partnership and you're trying to find someone? Has there been a relationship with a therapist that hasn't been working? Have you been in a relationship with somebody who has not been taking accountability, or they're not aware of their boundaries or their limits, or they're depressed, or they're sick, or they're having addiction issues? Something like that can be kind of going on here. Not for everybody, but it can. Obviously, the theme is that partnerships, whether that's business or romantic, will test your boundaries. So when I said a wolf's in sheep's clothing, okay, that's what this is, especially for Libra risings. A wolf in sheep clothing can appear as a charming ally or as a person who's your savior, but you really want to kind of feel it out first before you fully kind of commit, because we don't see so clearly when Neptune is in the 7th house. It is possible for some of you guys, you meet an older person and you're like, oh my God, they're amazing, they're perfect, or you meet the best new therapist or the best business partner, or somebody who, says, hey, I'm here to help. What can I do? And it can be great, but new people are going to start kind of coming into your life. Saturn deals with your 4th house, which is about home and family, emotions in the past. The Saturn connection to your 5th house is children. So there's a lot of like airing out old family drama with people. There's also a lot of airing out home and children related things with partners. There could be a sense also of considering moving away from home, or moving to be with a partner, or a partner moving to be with you. Or how you're moving forward in a relationship. And I think that, especially like Libra risings who are in relationships, I think it's a little bit more difficult for you guys, because there can be this feeling that, partners aren't seeing you so clearly. They can be kind of evasive. They're not taking accountability for things. They may also seem like lost, and Libra risings are going to be like, where are we going? Like, where are we going with this? Because they don't feel like that the 7th house people have a vision, or that they're blocked from actually being able to kind of like move forward. Anyway, so my advice for you guys, because we're tying together the 4th, 5th, and obviously Neptune's connection to the 6th, which could be health habits or self-sabotage of the partner, it's about standing firm in your needs and not people-pleasing, seeking partners who match your real self, not a facade, and confronting conflict directly, because you can clear the air here. And some of you guys have possibly the last couple of weeks clearing the air so you can actually grow and you can move forward. That is the positive of this. But if you're, early degree Libra and you've got some of these oppositions, you're going to feel like it's harder for you to have diplomacy. And the irony, right, that Aries wants conflict and the seventh house wants diplomacy, that, so there are going to be some situations where you're going to be like, we can't have diplomacy because you're not seeing things clearly, or you're not able to kind of take accountability, or you're not able to see your part in this. And so for some Libra risings, it's going to be like you're having to wash your hands of the situation and be like, here's the boundary. If you can't maintain that, this I'm out. So it's going to be some really, really big defining moments for some of you guys, both single or, kind of partnered. My advice is just don't allow some of the habits that are coming in from your relationships, clients, partnerships, whatever, throw you off. That connection with Neptune is, it could make you sick. It could also bring on some bad habits. It could create some issues with your routine. Okay? Good luck. We've got I almost said Aries, Scorpio and Scorpio rising. What's up, Scorpio? You've got Saturn and Neptune that are aligning in Aries, 2025 and 2026. This is going to be happening in your 6th house, in a sign that you don't have too much in common with, but you're both ruled by Mars. So I think that you're going to be able to kind of appreciate this energy more than some of the other signs. So Scorpio, what is the 6th house, right? The 6th house is work, it's health, daily routines, it's your habits, it's your pets, it's your coworkers, it's your office space. It's also everything to do with like busy work. So when you have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's brewing here, I'm predicting for you guys, health or work habits might hit a breaking point. Addictions could surface as scapegoats. A new routine could emerge, aligning the body and the soul. Think of like competitive swimming, hot saunas, possibly detoxing, martial arts, physical fitness, boxing, soaking in hot tubs, stuff like that. Very Saturn-Neptune. And I do think that really this is about auditing your daily life and asking yourself what's real and what's a crutch. Starting a fitness or a mindfulness practice with discipline and not ignoring small warning signs. Now, obviously that sounds like a lot, but the truth is that it is very health and wellness related, but it's also connecting to, can you trust the people in your workspace? Are you kind of like dragging a little bit when it comes to maintaining a schedule? Are you not maintaining it very well? Are you delaying and getting distracted? That kind of stuff. Saturn is connected to the mind and communication, as well as siblings and contracts or short distance traveling or learning. And the 4th house connection with Saturn is home and family. So I do feel like there's a lot of like scheduling stuff that comes up for you. What am I working? What am I seeing family? How can I make time for learning? How can I make time for traveling? How can I work through some of the kinks and issues with neighbors or even with siblings? How can I communicate better my schedule and how I'm kind of like, dealing with people in the day-to-day? Neptune obviously deals with the 5th house, so it's about making time for the divine, making time for dating, for children, romantic and creative projects. So we're kind of throwing it all together in the 6th house. What I can tell you is I do feel like the sextile to Pluto helps you because obviously that's your ruler. So it is saying that if you're willing to dramatically change and transform something emotionally or on the home front or when it comes to your home and family situation, whether that's a relocation, a remodel, whatever, this can actually be really beneficial, especially if you're like, hey, the changes and I'm going to be, having a kid or working from home or whatever, if you're getting really good about your routine, you'll be able to kind of lean into that Pluto in the 4th house transit a little bit better. However, emotional health can impact physical health. Physical health can impact emotional health. Get your house in order, get things organized, is my advice. And having now just coming out of Saturn and Neptune in my 6th house, obviously Neptune's been there for years, but Saturn has been there for pretty much like the last 2 years. I like it. I feel like malefics do very well in the 6th house. Saturn, Mars, maybe not Neptune because Neptune can bring up weird rashes, allergies, issues with inflammation, issues with sinuses. Like it's crazy. Neptune my husband's Scorpio rising, just saw Neptune go into his 6th house and he's just got this like terrible like head cold, and I'm like, it's Neptune. And in Aries, it's obviously the inflammation, the eyes, the nose, all that stuff. When it was in Pisces for me, it was a little different because I finally recognized that a lot of it was me being like, I'm exhausted, emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, and like didn't want to get stuff done. And then I had to learn how to kind of work flow into my routine, working out, meditating, also taking time to sleep. That was a big part of it. But for Scorpios, it's going to be like, if you're not getting things done, and you're not going to have anybody to blame but yourself. As much as I hate to say that, because Aries is the self. So this is about finding ways maybe to use technology, digital scheduling. Maybe this is about hiring help. So you might hire somebody to train the dog or walk the dog or babysit the kids, or, be a part-time kind of, help for you in some way so you can get things done, especially around the house or when it comes to home and family. That might be part of it. But diagnosing the health stuff, you don't want to do that with Saturn and Neptune and Aries. You want to take your health seriously. And for a lot of you guys, you'll benefit from sticking to a strict routine. And that doesn't just mean you're working 24/7. It means you need time to have fun. Neptune is connected to your 5th house. You need time to create. You need time to dream. And you need to make time for the things that matter the most to you. And that's where I think you guys are going to do the best. But now coming out the other side of it, I can tell you that it actually is really great because you realize that you really need to get clear about what sacrifices you're willing to make. And also when it comes to matters of the health stuff on the other side can actually be really good as long as you're willing to make those changes. Good luck, Scorpio. I've got Sag and Sag rising. What's up, Sag? You're going to be doing Saturn and Neptune in Aries in your 5th house. And this will be kind of brewing 2025 going into 2026. So for you guys, especially if you're in early degree, Sag, Sun, Moon, or Rising, it's going to be trining. So Saturn will be trining your ascendant. So it's like, even though you're adventurous and you want to go big or go home, you'll be able to do that in a more structured way with your children, with creativity, with dating, self-expression, having fun, taking chances. Neptune's going to make you, I think, a little bit more creative and a little bit more whimsical, and also a little bit more into like romance as well, right? And maybe new hobbies and things you can do at home, opportunities for children also. All right, so Saturn and Neptune hanging out in your guys' 5th house. For the most part, it's friendlier. I think it's going to get really colorful with a sextile to Uranus in your 7th house. Because there is going to be like, okay, you're meeting people, you're getting serious, and then there's spontaneous changes in relationships. So for many of you guys, it's like, oh, we're not in love anymore. Okay, Uranus in the 7th, changes in relationships. But for others, it's like, oh my God, I unexpectedly met somebody, and then it's like, boom, some of you guys are going to be pregnant. Some of you guys are going to be moving together, traveling together, committing to each other more seriously. So it's going to be like a really interesting kind of transit to see those two aspects playing out at the same time. Creativity, romance, self-expression, taking chances, having fun, self-employment, your children. It could also be about dating. I am predicting for Sag risings, creative or romantic bursts that could really redefine you, okay, in a good way. But you have to watch for illusions in love and art. You can have some people come in that you kind of put them on this pedestal and you think it's like everything. And then you're like, oh, this is the reality of this relationship. Or, losing yourself in art. I can think of somebody who I follow who's like, kind of prominent right now, is going through this transit, and they had been an addict for a very long time, and then they got sober. Now all of a sudden they're like, well, I'm throwing it all out the window, deciding I'm gonna start doing drugs again and creating art because I really want to immerse myself in that experience, and that's how I want to make art. It's a religious experience. And I'm like, what the hell? And then I'm like, oh, the Saturn Neptune in the 5th, So I do feel like for you guys, watch for some of the illusions. On the other hand, a passion project might launch you into the spotlight. This might be your moment in the sun. I would just create from your heart and not for applause. Avoid chasing idealized lovers. Seek real connections. Take risks, but ground them in purpose. Now, Saturn deals with your money, what you invest into, what you personally have. It's also about communication. So you're learning to communicate more about what you value, what you want. Some of you guys need to kind of take more calculated risks. Don't be jumping into a quick investment strategy, or getting bamboozled into, oh, buy this and then sell that. Also, there could be a lot of expenses going into new hobbies or new creative projects. Money also that's going to be allocated towards children. That could be a theme. And I think a lot of this is investing in something at home. Like, Neptune is tied to this. So it can mean that you have like a new entertainment center that you're kind of like building out, or you're setting up TVs, or you're designing. a children's room, it could be that. It could also mean that you're taking on a more kind of stricter parenting routine, with Saturn and Neptune in the 5th house. You're getting serious about your vision and what you want for relationships. Like, don't get too bogged down on yourself if you're somebody who you're like, I want love or I want children, because Uranus in the 7th house could show up very quickly. There's going to be a multitude of people who are going to start showing up, but you have to be really kind of careful and protective of your heart and not just give it away to anybody. I guess that's what I would kind of say. But I remember my Saturn in the 5th house transit. I remember that being a transit for me that was like, okay, I'm only going to invest time or energy in things that I really love. And those ended up being the things that I feel like were the most successful. That Saturn transit in my 5th house is why I came back to YouTube, and I was like, I love doing this. I'm going to keep doing it. So I think that for you guys, whether it's a person, if it's a kid, if it's a hobby, it doesn't really matter. Just try to see clearly about what sacrifices you're going to be making, especially within your home space or within your family space, what sacrifices you have to make to, have your pinball collection or maybe to have your DVD collection, whatever, because it may impact other people within the home in terms of what you're going to be doing creatively or collecting. Okay? Good luck, Sag. We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. What's up, Capricorn? Obviously, this is quite important for you as you're a chart that's ruled by Saturn. So anytime planets are coming into conjunction with your planet, stuff happens. I want you to think about what's happened the last 2 months, all right? Venus retrograde over Saturn, Venus retrograde over Saturn, Mercury retrograde over Saturn. What has that shown you? What came back up for you? Did you go back home? Did you move? Were you reassessing a situation with a parent? There's been something brewing in your home base, all right? So wherever Saturn is where you are. So Saturn moving into the 4th house means that you're getting more serious about your home and your living situation. Granted, it might mean that you have to sell a house, move back home. Neptune being there is going to be more about your vision. So when we put it together, this is the topic of home, family, roots, but also the past, right? Where you've been, what you're wrapping up, what you're finishing. So there could be a lot of you preparing for something this year that's actually going to be going on more so next year. I feel like family dynamics or your living situation might shift dramatically and old foundations could crack, revealing truths. A move or a heritage discovery could definitely spark some change. I'm going to say some things here. Some of you guys are going to find out that you have relatives you did not know that you had because of the connection with Neptune. And Neptune's connection to siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins. Some of you guys might do some of those ancestry tests and then you realize, oh my God, I've got a half this, or, I've got a cousin here or a great aunt there. Some of you guys might find out about a new part of your culture or your heritage, Aries, that you did not know existed in your bloodline. Others are going to be, communicating and going back and forth with siblings about a home or family matter. So something going on with a parent, some of you guys should talk to Sag Risings. They'll tell you all about it, that they've had family members with dementia. They've had house floodings. They have, had storms that have impacted their home. They found out some major family scandal or secret. All of these things kind of happen with Saturn and Neptune here. But I feel like this is really for you building a home. And this could be literal or emotional. And it's a home that reflects you, not necessarily tradition. And this is also about facing buried family issues head on, not hiding from them, and anchoring your dreams in reality. Now, Saturn is you. It's also about your money and your resources, and Neptune is about communication. So there could be lots of serious conversations that you're having with family about money, about home, about property. Hey, do we sell the house or do we renovate? How are we taking care of or, dealing with expenses pertaining to an estate, or, how are we managing finances for a parent, that kind of stuff. I do feel like I have to be honest here because, obviously having Saturn or Neptune in an angular house is going to be a little bit more dynamic. So for Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, all of them are definitely going to hear this very loud because it's in houses that are going to amplify some of these themes. And the 4th house is inherently private. So it might mean that you're focusing more on home security, your privacy, you're dealing with some heavy family matters. This is the lowest point in the chart. There's no candy coating it. The southern part of the chart that I see is the lowest part of the chart. So there's nowhere to go but up from here. And you're looking up and you're going to be looking up going, all right, well, am I ever going to meet anybody, Libra? Am I ever going to have a relationship, or am I ever going to, be where I want to be in my career? And like, who's going to help me, that kind of stuff. And Saturn and Neptune means that you're forging your own way forward. You might be wrapping up old home and family things this year, but you're doing it because you're like, I'm actually moving somewhere completely different next year. I've had a lot of Capricorn risings in the last year that are like, my parents died, or I'm estranged from my family, or, my kids won't talk to me, or crazy stuff where it's like literally Capricorn risings are suddenly now needing to be a lot more independent. And what you'll get from this with Saturn and Neptune is you might move to a foreign country. You might move to a coastal city. You might decide that you want to go live in a rural area and, you want to have a farm. You might want to be more hands-on with the home building project. You might move somewhere that you've never been before and you're doing it on your own. You're building a new home. And I think that the home is symbolic of your heart. It doesn't necessarily need to be a particular place. I have Saturn and Neptune conjunct in the 4th house. I would not wish this on anybody. And I don't like saying that. I just tell you so that way, you're prepared. And I think the biggest takeaway for me with having that natally and also having my Saturn return was me kind of being like, home is not a place. Home is wherever I make it, wherever I decide for it to be. And that if I keep dealing with some of the reoccurring patterns and things that are connected to family and home stuff, it's just going to follow me wherever I go. So I have to deal with it and process it and kind of move on. So just some food for thought. And a lot of it's going to be about how you're communicating and thinking about your family. And certainly journaling can be really helpful for that, if that's something that could potentially give you a little bit of like, an opportunity to kind of like reflect because of the connection with the 3rd house. Is like writing stuff down and like logging things, can definitely be helpful as you go and you review what the actual transit is like. But you guys are on the up and up for something completely different and brand new. And I think for many of you guys, dramatic financial changes, both good or bad, is also what's fueling this with some of the sextiles to Pluto. So some of you guys can have a lump sum of money come in and you're like, boom, I'm moving, Others can be like, well, my finances are changing. Now I'm needing to kind of downsize. I'm going back home. So I'd love to hear from you guys and hear what's been going on with some of the transits recently. But I'll tell you that this is a very important transit because you're going to be going and figuring out just what kind of a home or a life you're going to be building for like the next 2.5, 3 years. And everything for the next 30 years will be built upon this foundation. So be very present with your emotions, your home, and your family. Good luck. I've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. What's up, Aquarius? Important for you as obviously Saturn is your traditional ruler. So this will be Saturn and Neptune coming into conjunction in 2026, but you're going to feel it in 2025 a little bit here in your 3rd house. I like this for you for a number of reasons. One is, it's got obviously your chart ruler involved, but also this is going to be sextiling Pluto, which will be in your 1st house. So this dramatic change in sense of self, this transformation of who you are, how you look, your identity, could be your career, could be your status, it could just be your beliefs about life, is heavily influencing Saturn and Neptune in the 3rd house, so the mind. The 3rd house is communication. It's also about learning. It can be about community, siblings, your neighbors, traveling, vehicles, all of that stuff. So Saturn going into the 3rd house does tell me that there's going to be a focus on a new way of thinking, a new way of communicating. Maybe you start learning a new language. Maybe you consider buying a new car. Maybe you move into a new neighborhood. Maybe you have some challenges with your siblings or with your neighbors. That could happen. But I think that the conjunction to Neptune is very telling because it's almost like you're taking some kind of subconscious thoughts, changes within yourself, trying to find a way to kind of redefine your value or how you make money, and you're doing it in the 3rd house. Like I think a lot of Aquarius, and I know this because I have a number of Aquarius risings in my practice, all of you guys are suddenly like, oh, I want to be a writer. I'm a blogger. I'm writing a novel, or I'm creating a blog, or something like that. I'm teaching a class. It's very much about information and communication. And I feel like for you, your voice, it could ignite a moment, especially with the sextiles to Pluto. This could definitely be about, kind of waking other people up or sharing some, like brand new, groundbreaking ideas. Or it could also be kind of exposing a lie that you've been telling yourself, and it can show you where you in turn need to change because of the sextiles and also the conjunction to Neptune. Where have you been telling yourself that you are or are not good enough, right? And is it true? How is that impacting your money, your resources, your self-esteem? That's something I would be asking myself. Where can transformation come through movement, literal or, travel? It could also be about moving, right? Saturn Neptune is a very can-do attitude, and like affirmations, I think will be really powerful in the third house. I think also like walking, fitness, like biking, that kind of stuff can be really helpful if you want to see a physical transformation in your body. And what you're listening to while you're traveling or while you're kind of walking around can be really empowering as well. I do feel like, siblings or neighbors might play a key role here for better or worse. But really, at the end of the day, with this transit, it's about speaking your truth, even if it's messy. Saturn and Neptune can feel a little messy, but I think you guys are going to be focusing on writing, teaching, or sharing your vision, and you're not going to want to censor it. You're not going to want to water it down. You're not going to apologize. You're not going to want to have it overly polished or overly edited. I feel like for a lot of you guys, you might just start doing like podcasts. You might start doing live casts. You might start doing radio shows, or you're going to be writing something, and like you might be rushing to kind of get the information out, and it's going to be very raw with the sextile to Pluto. And it might mean that, this is coming through your writing or just like your thinking process, but you might want to be sharing it with other people. I would just say watch for misinformation from helpful sources. So there can definitely be a lot of you searching for information and trying to kind of verify things, but you might feel like you're kind of hitting a wall and you're not necessarily getting like either the feedback or the information that you want. And a lot of that is obviously tied to, Saturn's connection to your 12th house, where there's some blockages. So that there can be some blockages in how you're thinking or how you're communicating or being able to receive information. But I think if you lean into the sextile with Pluto, it's going to actually be really beneficial for you. And it can help you through shifting your mindset and empowering yourself to start to physically see the changes that you're hoping to see. And also it's going to be about more money and better self-esteem. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys. I hope you enjoy that. And also on the other side of this, something else worth mentioning is that, Saturn making a sextile, Saturn and Neptune, to what will be Gemini in your 5th house. Like, wow, a creative sense of self-expression, creative wordplay, communication, like being on stage. I think a lot of Aquarius risings are like, yeah, they're going to become writers. They're going to create content. They're going to be YouTubers. They're going to be putting information out there. They're going to be on the stage. So just be mindful that your words can kind of help or hinder you. Good luck. And finally, my Pisces risings. You guys get a little bit of a break here pretty soon over the summer. Saturn and Neptune are going to go into Aries briefly. That doesn't necessarily mean that you get a pass. You're just not directly in the line of fire now that it's no longer in your sign. So it has less of an emphasis and focus on your physical body, your dress, your actions, your behavior, how you look. Now it's going to be more in regards to your 2nd house. Now, obviously the 2nd house deals with money, values, self-worth, but it can also be about what you physically own, what you possess, your spending power. I think it can also be about your personal style, what you're eating, what you're consuming. That can be another theme with the 2nd house. So with Saturn and Neptune conjunct here, your finances or your self-esteem is now in for a reality check. False security that's been kind of hanging around can collapse, or a bold new way of earning or valuing yourself is likely going to emerge. Now, I recommend really redefining wealth on your terms. Don't chase illusions, invest in skills or resources that feel authentic to you, and avoid get-rich-quick schemes or traps from, financial guides or people who are trying to sell you something. Chasing the money is not necessarily going to equate to being happy because Saturn and Neptune is not the happiest of conjunctions. And you might start to kind of realize because, Saturn is connected to your goals and self-undoing, Neptune is you. Some of you guys might get exactly what you wanted. And then you're like, okay, now what? Right? So for some of you guys, it doesn't spell out like financial misery. It can actually mean that you're like, okay, I worked so hard to have X amount of money in the bank, or I got this windfall, or, I finally sold my company and I have like $1 million. And it's like, it doesn't feel the way I thought it was going to feel. And a lot of that is because Saturn actually has less. It wants less. It wants to simplify things. And you are Neptune. So there is this sense of you going, oh, actually under this transit, less is more. I want to simplify my life. I want to give things away, right? You might feel like you might want to do something that is going to be more nonprofit oriented or some kind of philanthropy work. That's possible. Something where you can kind of help people that you might find more meaning in doing that. By the same token, I do feel like for some of you guys, it's about getting real with what exactly you do value, what you want to spend your money on, what it is that you truly need, and like what you can do without. And you'll see some of like the ways that the relationships that you have with money might actually be unhealthy, and it might be stuff that's coming up that you're tying your self-worth to what you have or numbers in a bank account or what you possess, which in turn is going to have a pretty big shift in not just your financial goals, but also the kind of people you hang out with, right? Because Saturn's connected to your 11th house. It's also going to be about how you're redefining yourself based off of what you have. And it can have a very positive, powerful effect when it comes to, I think, your self-esteem. And, how you feel about yourself is going to determine and dictate how people are going to treat you, how much you're going to get paid, right? All of this stuff. So it's going to be interesting. I think that, if this were me, knowing that your 11th and 12th house lord is coming into conjunction with your chart ruler in the second, it's like you have to be willing to discard friends or self-sabotaging behavior or old beliefs or where you've been kind of kidding yourself about what you're capable of achieving or what you thought you really wanted. And you want to surround yourself with proactive, productive people who are going to inspire you, who you're going to want to become the most like, and you're going to want to keep those people around. And it's a lot of having to really, create budgets and stick to them and be a little bit more conservative. But at the end of this transit, better financial habits. And also, I think you're going to have much better self-esteem. Hope that's helpful for you. All right, guys. Well, that concludes, obviously, my looking ahead series. As we get closer to this conjunction throughout this year and even really into next year, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. Obviously, we don't quite exactly know where we're going yet, but we know that 2025 is setting the stage with this transit for something big in 2026. Just remember to ask yourself, are you drifting in someone else's storm or are you chasing your own course? This is about really facing some of these problems head on, getting the show on the road and not waiting to start steering our ship. So let me know, how do you guys feel with these transits? I'd love to hear if you have a Saturn-Neptune connection in your chart, how you're feeling with some of the energies. Do you feel like the last couple of months with the retrogrades and the eclipse in Aries has prepared you for this? What experiences have you guys had? Obviously, if this hits home, definitely drop a comment below, hit the like button, and subscribe if you want more of my cosmic insights. Until next time, be yourself and keep steering your ship, and I will see all of you guys very soon. Take care.